what I'm here to do is to talk about my very favorite subject. And that subject is revolution. Now, if my team is sick and tired of me talking about this, then I have succeeded. Because this is an important topic, because it talks so much about who EERE is and what we really do. Now, the way I want to start talking about this is to first talk a little bit about revolution, but to go there by talking a little bit about my son. So my son is a fan of the Minions. Those of you who have children may be familiar. These cute little yellow creatures who speak in a language no one can really understand. Now, one of the great things about having a child is they can reintroduce you to things that you loved yourself as a kid. Now, I didn't have Minions when I was a kid, but I did have the Beatles. And so Minions recently, for me, helped rekindle my love for the Beatles. So some of you may know one of the songs that they sing. So to quote it, as the Minions would say, Turka la pasha parova, hitu kula ni kalo. Now, I have no idea what that means, except for the fact that I know the tune. So when I was growing up, here's the way it went. You say you want a revolution? Well, you know, we all want to change the world. Now, what I love about working at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy is I'm working with people who don't just want to change the world, they are literally changing the world and have been for decades. They have been creating and accelerating a revolution based on investments for decades, but that has truly kicked into gear since 2008, that is fundamentally reshaping the energy we use and the way we use energy. Just a few examples from our Revolution Now report. Wind power and solar power, two technologies that have dropped dramatically in cost, 40 to 60% since just 2008, while dramatically increasing in the marketplace. In fact, these two technologies in 2015 alone represented 2/3 of the new electricity generating capacity in the United States. If you predicted that a decade ago, people would have laughed at you. But that's the kind of revolution that EERE and DOE are helping to create. But we didn't stop there. Batteries for electric vehicles have dropped over 70% in cost. And we now have over 500,000 battery electric vehicles in the marketplace today, despite gas prices falling through the floor. And then there's the fantastic bright spot of LEDs, which have dropped in cost by more than 90%. And we now have over 200 million LED light bulbs installed throughout the United States because they cost about $2, they last longer than incandescents and CFLs, and they give you better light. The market loves these technologies. In fact, GE isn't even selling incandescents or CFLs anymore because they just don't make business sense. That's the kind of revolution that we have helped create. And that's the kind of revolution that it's critical for us to accelerate. Now, this fundamental reshaping of the world, I don't think we're going to go back. We are not going to go back on this clean energy revolution, and a recent science paper reinforces that point. It came out yesterday. It's by some guy named Barack Obama, who had a lot to do with ensuring that this clean energy revolution happened, and I couldn't agree more. We have an irreversible momentum today when it comes to clean energy. There's also another revolution where I think we have irreversible momentum, and that's a revolution when it comes to manufacturing, and you're going to hear more about that later today from Mark. At EERE, we are fundamentally creating new manufacturing industries. We are revolutionizing the way people make things. One great example is this 3D printed Shelby Cobra. We invented that technology working with the manufacturing demonstration facility down at Oak Ridge National Labs. With this technology, we were able to print the majority of this car and its parts in 24 hours through 3D printing technology. This revolutionized the way people even thought about 3D printing, that it could even be done at this scale. And thanks to this, we've helped new companies, for example, like Local Motors, come into existence. While at the same time, we've helped companies like Boeing, GE, and Caterpillar learn how to make critical parts through 3D printing, changing the world, revolutionizing the world of manufacturing. But even there, we didn't stop. Through President Obama's leadership, through the Manufacturing USA initiative, and great work by Mark and others and their teams, we're also inventing things like the next generation of power electronics, composites, and so many more technologies through this fantastic initiative, Manufacturing USA. This is exactly how we are going to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States, by fundamentally reinventing and reshaping what manufacturing is and what we can do, and ensuring that clean energy is made in the USA. Because if we care about this great and amazing country of ours, we don't have a choice. I mean, look, at the end of the day, our scientists are very clear. They're telling us that we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by up to 80% or maybe more by 2050 if we're going to avoid the most devastating impacts of climate change. And while it's cold outside, towards the end of this week, we're going to hit the 60s in the middle of January in Washington, D.C. That's a depressing reality. And the horrible pun that I use that goes along with that is that when it comes to the devastating impacts of climate change, we're just getting warmed up. I usually get a few more groans. Thanks for the laugh. The laughs were much kinder than the groans I usually get. Yes, I admit I love dad jokes. But that future, that warming future, it's anything but inevitable. In fact, a recent report put out by the White House charted a path that if we accelerate the pace of innovation from the pace we're on today, this red line, to this green line, which we can do if we stretch ourselves, if we set higher goals, and if we invest, we can get ourselves on a path to meet or maybe even exceed the goals that we need to do to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. But it's not just about solving our problems, it's also about taking advantage of our opportunities. Our world is fundamentally changing in so many ways. The barriers between technologies are breaking down. The world is more and more of a global economy. And the world itself is fundamentally changing. We live in a world today with about 7 billion people. By 2050, we're going to grow by about a third to about 10 billion people. And most of those folks are going to be in developing countries. And they are going to be hungry to live the same kinds of lifestyles we get to live and we've grown used to. And that means a lot more energy. And that means someone's going to supply that energy. And that is a huge opportunity. So between the need for more energy and the growth in clean energy, this to me is truly a huge opportunity. And the momentum has been building. We're not the only ones that recognize this. I mean, back in between 2005 and 2015, investment in clean energy quadrupled because people see the huge opportunity that's out there. But again, this is another place where we're just getting warmed up. I truly expect in the next decade, maybe two at most, clean energy is going to become an opportunity, not just in the trillions, but the tens of trillions of dollars. And I think this creates a fundamental question. Are we going to grab a big piece of that pie or not? That's our fundamental mission at EERE. Our goal is to support sustainable transportation, energy efficiency, and renewable power to accelerate the pace of innovation and to ensure that we can sustain and create American leadership in the transition to a global clean energy economy. That's who we are. When it comes to clean energy, we are the solutions people. But I've got to be honest. If I can get this thing to do what I want it to do, I can be honest. This always happens. We're going to solve climate change before we solve our AV problems. Could someone go to the next slide? Anyone? Bueller? Well, as they try to fix that, the reality is we are at a fundamental risk of falling behind if we don't keep up and really accelerate our pace of investments. I mean, in other sectors, there's a lot more money as a fraction of sales going in to R&D, whether it's pharmaceuticals or the auto industry or defense or others. orders of magnitude more of their revenues are going into R&D compared to clean energy. In fact, clean energy barely even registers when it comes to R&D as a fraction of sales. It's less than 0.25%. We're going to fall behind hard and fast if we don't pick up that pace. But the challenge is even bigger than that. So there you go. There's the tiny number. Oops. But the challenge is even bigger than that. Why? Because yes, the world is waking up. The world is investing in clean energy. But you know who's investing the fastest? You know who's investing the most right now? It's Asia. Asia is driving the growth in addition to us. And in fact, they're driving a disproportionate amount of investment in clean energy. In fact, just last week, China announced that they plan to invest more than $360 billion through 2060 on renewable power sources, with a plan to create more than 13 million jobs. Those are jobs that should be here in the United States, and they can be if we make our investments. But fundamentally, China, they're playing to win. If we take our foot off the accelerator in any way, shape, or form, they're going to pull away, and they're going to get way, way ahead of us. We don't have a choice here if we want a strong economy, if we want clean air, if we want more jobs. This is where the world is heading. It's investments in clean energy. And that's exactly why President Obama led 19 other world leaders in a commitment to double investments in clean energy over the next 5 years. This is through an initiative called Mission Innovation. And this is just the beginning of putting the pedal to the metal when it comes to accelerating clean energy R&D. Now, the good news is, though, it can't just be about the federal government. There's a lot that we can do, but we also need private sector involvement. Oops. And that's where we had a fantastic announcement just last month, where Bill Gates and a variety of investors, bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, I guess tripartisan, launched a $1 billion investment fund to support clean energy breakthroughs. But they're not just looking for a return on investment a quarter from now or even a year from now. They're in it for the long run. They're willing to tolerate the risk it takes to invest in clean energy, and even more importantly, they're willing to be patient because it takes time for these investments to pay off. So I'm excited about the fact that we've got government stepping up, we've got major investors stepping up, but it's not just about the big guys. They don't have a lock on how to solve things for our nation. We need a whole new generation of clean energy entrepreneurs. And that's why we focused on not just supporting individual technologies, but also on really building a whole new ecosystem when it comes to clean energy innovation. Really creating a whole network that can support getting technologies out of industry, out of academia, out of entrepreneurs, using foundations, tapping into investors, and especially tapping into our national laboratories and the amazing national treasures that they are to accelerate the pace of innovation, to help entrepreneurs. Now, I don't have time to go through each and every one of these. We've got over half a dozen programs targeted in this space. So instead, I want to talk about one. In fact, I want to talk about one person. This is Etosha Cave. Etosha grew up near an abandoned oil and gas site in Houston. There, she saw the devastating impacts of environmental waste. For her, that meant in her community, significantly higher cancer rates, losing people that they loved and cared about. What did she do with that pain and with her great knowledge and great skill? She went on to get a PhD from Stanford and was determined, driven, to find a better way, a cleaner way to make fuel than what she had to deal with growing up. Now, through the support of one of our entrepreneurial programs, Cyclotron Road, which is really focused on ensuring that investors can get access to Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, both the resources that we've got there and the brilliant minds we've got there, she joined with 2 other colleagues to launch a whole new startup called Opus 12. And Opus 12 is focused on the simple principle, but challenging concept, of converting carbon dioxide into clean fuel. Now, they didn't just have a good idea. They had a good idea that other people got excited about. In fact, after going through our program, they went on to win Fortune's Clean Tech Company competition. That's what this picture is right here. And in October, they won the Forbes 30 Under 30 Change the World competition in Boston. They're just knocking everyone's socks off because they got a chance, because someone believed in them. Mark's team helped fund this program. Someone believed in them, invested in them, and gave them a chance to shine. And I know there's a lot more folks like Atosha out there, a lot of them. A lot of them are in this room or hopefully listening to this online. You are all folks who are eager to solve our energy challenges, our climate challenges, our economic challenges, tapping into innovation, tapping into imagination, tapping into technology. This is our future. This is the core of how we're going to solve our challenges. And these are folks who are arriving at a unique moment in time. A moment when if we make the right investments, we're going to be positioned to make more money, create more opportunities solving climate change than you can create by creating climate change. More money from solving the problem than from creating it. That's the world we can live in if we make the right investments. And I see our job at the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy is to keep building more and more pathways to support them and the many other entrepreneurs and companies and academia and labs who are trying to tackle these problems. Now, our job is also to keep the revolution going. Not just to keep it going, but to accelerate it, to pick up the pace. And that's why in our Revolution Now report, we also cite a whole host of technologies that are on the cusp of a revolution. This is how we're going to accelerate the pace of innovation. It's not just about those 4 technologies. The revolution is just beginning. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole list of technologies. Give it a gander. See how we have so many options, whether it's in transportation, in buildings, on the grid, better materials, and, as you heard about before, a lot more opportunity when it comes to big area additive manufacturing or large-scale 3D printing. And this doesn't even list plenty of other technologies, some of which you're probably going to hear about today, and many of which maybe none of us have heard about yet because they're being invented in our labs, in our national labs, or in our universities, at the Office of Research, at ARPA-E, or throughout the Department of Energy. Now, all these opportunities, all these inventions, in my mind, lead to one fundamental fact. We have, and we are developing the solutions we need to tackle climate change, to enhance our energy security, to save Americans billions, if not trillions of dollars, and to create the jobs not just of the present, but of the future, and to grow our economic competitiveness in a more and more competitive and challenging world. From my perspective, the choice is not whether or not to have a clean energy revolution. It's happening. It's in gear. And other countries are going to pick up the pace. The choice for our nation, for everyone in this room, everyone listening to this, is whether or not we are determined to ensure that our nation leads that revolution, that our nation gets the benefits and the positive outcomes from investing in clean energy that are theirs for our taking. I mean, we're an amazing country. We have a core spirit of entrepreneurship, of investment, of solving problems, picking our heads up and tackling the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. That's who we are. No one else has that ability. And if we invest in that ability, if we double down, if we triple down in our ability and our strengths, there is no stopping us when it comes to leading and accelerating this clean energy revolution that's already underway. There's a lot of folks out there who are trying to make that happen. And that includes all the folks at EERE and broadly at DOE and our national labs. You all are creating this revolution. You all are changing the world. And it's an incredible honor to have the chance to work with you and to see the amazing work that you've been doing and that I know you're going to keep doing in the decades ahead. So thank you, and thanks for your great work.